Hello, everyone. I am back from a little spring break and so happy to be back here with you all. While I love a getaway, I have to say that right now there is a lot of comfort in the ritual and routine of daily life, and these podcasts are definitely a part of that. I really love the whole process, the deep dives into these subjects and the conversations with all of these guests, and today's certainly will not disappoint. It feels really important to me to know that you're getting good takeaways. And Mary Katherine LeMaster is definitely someone who has a lot to offer us. She's affectionately known as MK, and I like to think of MK as a rebel rouser. As a 13-year-old, she received news that she would inevitably go blind. The idea of being different definitely challenged her, but the changes that occurred woke up something in MK that helped her find her way through the dark. This isn't just about visual impairment. This isn't just about being blind. My hope is that it has the same effect for you that it had for me, that it might wake you up to some of the ways in which insecurities keep you from accessing what you really need to live with more ease or to feel more like yourself. MK definitely has a way of helping us wake up a little bit more. She is one chic badass, and I'm so happy to share her story with you and more about her work here today on In Our Skin. So thanks so much for being here. Let's listen in.
I love how this light is coming straight onto my head.
Yes, it's like a beam of sunshine,
I
but
know it's wild. I love the color of your room.
there were months where behind me, and I didn't do it on purpose, but I had like six color samples. But if I like bent over, someone would be like, "Oh, you've got a lot of color samples." And I was like, "Yeah, because I can't find the perfect color." So
Mhm.
tell me this, is design a part of your life or art? Because it seems like that is just who you are in a way.
I love this question. I love this thought you have of me. I do. I love design and I love fashion. And I didn't remember that until I lost my sight 4 years ago. And so
What?
now I'm like, oh, now it's even more important for me to be surrounded by the things that I absolutely love. So I don't know.
Oh, I love that. So you're finding your ways of
Yeah.
incorporating it. What do you think it was about losing your sight that made that come
Oh
back to you?
man. I think that it was the constriction and I'm very rebellious, so I don't like being told what to do. So the more sight I've lost
Mhm.
and the more doctors would tell me, well, now you're blind, you can't do this, you probably can't do that, and telling me all of these things I couldn't do.
Yeah.
It made me look at my life and say, wait a minute, there are many areas in my life that I can choose to do the things I want to do that feel really good. And
That's
so,
pretty powerful, I think, for a lot of people. And there's not a wrong or a right response, but that's definitely the kind of response that takes you in one direction. And I think a lot of people can get there, but I can imagine it'd actually be interesting. Do you feel like you've met a lot of people who had similar responses?
oh, yes,
Yeah.
especially, you know, life changes the moment you get this diagnosis. And I always say, we leave the office with this new title that someone else gave you, right?
Yeah.
Like gave us when we're in that room. And so you spend time coming back to what you want your title to be, taking your own power back. And a lot of times the delivery is abrupt and is, again, confining,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be. It can be a completely different conversation. So it's changed the conversation I have with myself. And the people that I'm around in the blind and visually impaired community, we're all very similar. We're all very rebellious. we it's the resiliency that it's connected us. So just a
Resiliency
reminder.
is it's certainly a muscle you can build.
Mm.
And I think that, I kind of paused because I didn't want to say that I assume people don't start there, right? My mind went straight to stages of grief. and all of the different feelings and stages and places I would imagine someone going to. And this, I think a lot of people can relate to, not necessarily with your diagnosis, though I'm sure people out there are going to be so happy to hear this and to be able to, but really with any diagnosis, right?
It's anything.
It's yeah, yeah. We
It's
get a
really,
lot of we get a lot of labels, and it's even mental health diagnoses that now are
yeah.
like kind of coming through my mind as I'm thinking about this. And resiliency is not something that we've all necessarily learned about, but you kind of have to figure out.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
we can learn it, certainly.
of course I've heard about resiliency, but you don't really know it until you know it, until you
Hmm.
realize, oh, it's in my bones also. It's not just in someone else's, and the grief part, it's a tricky one because it's with us all the time, all the time. And so it's a constant wave of, okay, it's here.
Yeah.
What are we going to do today with it?
Which is a lot like being a human in many circumstances where we can be mad about it. And there's a time and a space for that. And there'll be a lot of things in our life that we can't control, but that choosing when to be in that feeling and when it's not serving us and what we do despite it.
And it's all on our own time. It's all in our own time. There is no right way to do it. It's not linear the way we want it to be. It is all in our own divine timing because we're going to do it every day. It's not just, okay, I got the diagnosis and now my life, I was basically told my life is over. And then you go home and you're under the covers for a really long time, or at least I was. And I still go back there often. I'm so grateful that I have all the tools that I have that I studied prior to being diagnosed because that's what's saving me. This is when my all my practices really shine and that come out and save my mental power, my spirit, all that all goes together.
I'd love to know how you saw that come together. And I think it might be helpful for people to know any part of your story that you want to share.
Yeah. So I at 13 I was diagnosed with something that's called retinitis pigmentosa. It is a rare eye condition. It's a degenerative eye disease. It runs in my family. And the way that it works is it opens up, that's the way I say it, but it opens up tunnel vision. So I
Oh, I love it.
lose peripheral vision and I have central vision. So it's tunnel vision.
Okay.
But growing up, it wasn't, it was again that my rebellious spirit. I just like this is never going to happen. At 13, they told me I would be blind by my 30s, and might as well go learn Braille and might as well figure this out. We didn't do any of that because I had so
Okay.
much vision. I had
Yeah.
so much vision. I had not severe night blindness,
Hmm.
but I have had it. I had had it for so long. I just adapted, as we all do.
Yeah.
Think about our ability in any situation, and I mean, we're
Well,
pretty
it's like that
incredible creatures.
relativity, right? It's like if this is what my norm is, it becomes what is normal, right? And I
Yeah,
think so we can adjust to it. It's interesting what you were saying about, sure, it could happen. There's actually a part of our brain that does this. 9 out of 10 people will have this happen, and we're like, I'm the one, I won't. So that's really common. And you know that it actually goes dark when people are depressed.
yeah.
So it's really interesting. So when we're depressed, we stop believing that we will be the one who it won't happen to, and we start believing that it will happen. And so I just think that's so interesting to know. And so this isn't going to happen. So you have a diagnosis, but a diagnosis doesn't necessarily even mean that it's going to happen, is what you're saying.
Not in my mind. So I
Okay.
went home and my parents were incredibly distraught. And I was too, I was more tired from the very extensive the testing. The testing itself physically was grueling and really painful and incredibly hard. They attach these hard contact lenses to your eyes and shine bright lights on in your eyes to create. They need to read the way that your retina is reading the light. But so exhausted from that, I don't think I had enough space and capacity to really feel. So when I was at home for the next 3 weeks, I just said to myself, okay, all right, let's say this actually does happen. I have to know that I'm gonna be okay. And this really was I mean, this was my spirit coming in to tell me, okay, try this because you have to know right now you're gonna be okay.
This is incredible just thinking about 13, by the way. Like, what were you doing at age 13? What was your mind like? We forget. Adults look back on their younger selves as if they knew everything we know now. It's really hard for us to accurately recall our 13-year-old selves. My 13-year-old self was doing what they did in the movies and practicing tying sheets together to climb out my window just in case when I was older I wanted to. Like, and just going back in my house. Like, that's what I was doing at 13. At 13, your mind is going, we need to figure out how to be okay if we lose our sight.
About if the delivery had been, because what I know now as a legally blind person is it's a spectrum, as such as life. But the spectrum is there's only 11% of the blind population that sees nothing.
Let
But
that sink in.
the 89% of us see something.
My father also is legally blind.
Yeah, and so he sees something, whether it's shapes or colors or
Mhm.
half of the because I at this point I see half of the room. But when I'm looking at something or someone's face, I see their face. I see their hair. I might see their shirt, but I don't see much around them.
Okay.
I do not see anything below their collarbones and down. It's as if I'm looking through a donut hole. I have 13% left. And because I have friends who have 5% and they're looking through a straw. So coming back to 13. So I spent the next 3 weeks. The first night, I rearranged my room, rearranged all the furniture, and I put it in the center and I just put it in weird and odd places. And I thought, okay, so I'll get up and I'll train myself to figure out how to get to the bathroom and back without hurting in pitch black. I was like, okay. So the first week was okay. I had my hands out, I felt my way through, and I went slowly and I breathed the whole time. And then the second week, I said, okay, switch things up again. And then I noticed something. I noticed that I could actually hear my furniture. So everything has a vibration to it.
At this point, you haven't actually lost the extent of vision that you have now. So you're almost creating the scenario by it being dark at night. And that's why you did this at night. And
Mhm.
so you did this enough. And then you started to notice hearing the furniture. And so hearing the
Uh,
furniture, for those of us who have never considered this, what's it like?
it's incredible. And it's my zone of safety is moving past my sense of sight and into feeling. So I would start because I realized, oh my gosh, wait, I can hear my desk sounds different than my dresser drawer. And when you look at it scientifically, yes, the vibration is going to be different in for each piece of furniture. It's fascinating. It's
I'm thinking, I
fascinating.
thought you would describe it almost like echolocation.
The vibration, but it's similar to echolocation.
Okay.
It's very, very similar because I would hear each piece and then I would keep every night I would change the furniture around. I would rearrange,
Oh
redesign.
my gosh, this is incredible. And this is in the middle of the night.
This is in the middle of the night. It had to be, it had, my room had to be incredible. I mean, it was pitch black. I made sure it was pitch black. And then the last week, I would move into feeling it, not even hearing it.
And as you're doing this, the perspective obviously is different back then. But you can look back on that 13-year-old now.
I
Like,
definitely had many moments where I was like, holy shit, I can do this. And so there was a part of me that knew, okay, I can do it. I can do it. So it really and truly, my 13-year-old self who was diagnosed with going blind opened up a portal for me and my gifts. What I was having a hard time with was when I was with other people, right? And when I would stay at someone else's house
okay.
and having to have the conversations with young girls, and having to, my mom would say, well, does so and so know about your eyes? Like this was always a topic. It was always a conversation.
Yeah.
As a parent now, I 100% understand that. But
What
but
did it feel like back then?
that was awful. It was awful. I didn't Nobody wants to be different.
Yep.
Well, we all want to be different, but on our own terms.
We want to be different in a way that everyone's going to think is so cool. But like we
Yeah, we're like
then
we're
don't want to
yeah,
be different in any way that is different.
yes. I want to show you how I'm different in my own way, not
Yes.
by someone else's words that say that I can't do something,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
but that
By
part was
limitation. And I feel like that's what a lot of our associations with diagnoses are, that it's a difference that is bad or less than. And we are still battling that left and right in our world, you know? It's hard. I can imagine as a 13-year-old growing up, not knowing anyone else. Actually, did you? Did you know anyone else with this
no,
condition?
I did it runs in my family. My introduction to the blind world was my great great aunt. And everyone said she was completely blind, but now knowing it's a spectrum,
Yeah.
I feel like that's entirely true. So she definitely had some sight left, but her home, she lived alone, cooked by herself.
I love it.
Whenever she opened the door, she was immaculately dressed, beautiful clothes, and she would always have these cookies that she had just made for us.
Yeah.
And her home was stunning. It was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And she definitely was a spitfire, and I think that came down the line.
So that apple didn't fall from the tree
Yeah,
either. The genetics are strong.
yes, yes, definitely. So, you know, back then I didn't have she was my only touch point for blind living. And I thought she was incredible, but I was also probably scared of her because you have no idea thinking about blindness, it's
Yeah.
you see nothing. Oh my gosh, you live in the dark, you see nothing.
Even just hearing the way you're saying it, like she had cookies. She was immaculately dressed. It's like that was what that 13-year-old was like. How?
Yeah,
How does your house look like this? How is it impressive? How do you have and express and do these things that are that there was an assumption, it sounds like, that like if you can't see, then it wouldn't look like this, right?
absolutely. She normalized blindness, right? That's her every day. And that's something that I'm spearheading that for myself and for my own community. That's why I share on social media as much as I do, because I want anyone who's going to the doctor today in the next 30 minutes, hour, tonight that gets diagnosed, I want them to see me and I want them to see everyone like us and realize, wait a minute. Life isn't over.
Love it.
It's definitely hard. It's definitely tricky and hard and incredibly depressing at times and
Yeah.
lonely. And also, we keep going.
Yeah. I think about this with my father, but you're making me think about certain things like not being able to drive actually has changed his sense of safety. And for someone who showed no vulnerability, and now he's having these conversations with us about, how it feels if he is home by himself and how far the hospital is. And um, if he were to have to call an ambulance, and it's very real where he is in his life. And I will tell you that the man takes chainsaws into the woods on a four-wheeler and cuts trees and turns wood. Now, if you've never seen anyone turn wood, do you know what
Yeah.
the process is like?
Oh, yeah.
You put a slab of wood on this huge metal, very strong, very powerful machine, and it spins it, spins it at this crazy rapid pace while you are holding a very sharp chisel.
No big deal.
At any point, you could hit a knot in the wood and the chisel will fly at you. It's like
Oh my
he has
gosh.
not slowed down. He is doing things that make no sense when you consider for him, he has macular degeneration. And so there are times when the weather is just so, and he can see things and it doesn't even make sense to me.
Yep.
And then other days, he doesn't see much and he can't make out our faces. And so he might think I'm my sister. He stays busy though.
I
He
know.
just moved on
It's
to the next thing.
of course, but the not driving has been the absolute most difficult thing I've experienced as far as independence.
Part of this is, I think that what you're doing is amazing in helping all of us consider, just considering what it's like and having some more understanding for the people that we see.
And I didn't know this about myself until now. But when I do things, I'm all in. And when I say I'm all in, I did O&M training, orientation and mobility. And so my trainer would come to my home and I would put on the blindfold and walk around my neighborhood using a cane or
Wait, I've
even that.
never heard of this training.
Yes. So trainers will come to your home. There are foundations, incredible foundations I would love to talk about. There's two,
Please.
your dogs and then dogs for the blind. They're free for anyone who is wanting to learn O&M, orientation and mobility training.
We'll
So
put that in the show notes for sure.
yes, 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 yes. I went through someone here in Houston, but I was outside blindfolded, crying, didn't want my neighbors to see me, all of the pieces. And I'd walk around the neighborhood, just learning all there is. Learn that the cane is now an extension of my body. Her name is Sugar. I've named her Sugar because I realize we're going to be together all the time. If I'm going to new
Yeah.
places, she's always with me because similar to your dad's vision, light is incredibly important to
Okay.
me. And it is a huge factor in what I see and what I don't see. It's because the way the glare off of the light will hit my retina. So my retina doesn't always read everything because I've lost rods and cones, which is what reads the light and that detects light in the back of the eye.
And I did learn this at some point in school. And as you're saying, I'm like, wow, I lose so much.
I know. I know. So when I go into a grocery store or anywhere
Okay.
that has fluorescent lighting, my vision immediately goes down to probably 5%.
So it's like that effect of deer in headlights that we experience if too much light is in our eyes.
Yes,
Okay.
it's just like that. And so I always will have on a hat. So the hat takes care of the glare for the most part.
Okay.
And I just move incredibly slow when I'm in places to shop and crowded places. So back to the O&M training. I did that for a while and then I kind of got used to using it around my neighborhood. And then I was doing some work professionally as a coach and I wanted to do more speaking. So I reached out to a trainer and I registered for a course out in Santa Fe. And I thought, oh my gosh, this will be my first time to fly by myself since I lost my vision, which I thought I would never do again. I never thought that I would travel
Interesting.
again. I didn't, not by myself. I
It
really
felt too vulnerable, unsafe.
vulnerable is the right word. But safety is
Yeah.
a bigger one, right? Am I safe enough to walk through this giant building with fluorescent lights, people passing me by? Will I see little children? Will I
Mhm.
see suitcases? Will I see the stairs, the escalator? And now here comes the other part of, well, if I'm having a bad day or a hard eye day, I can just request a wheelchair.
Right. You don't want to do it. Is that why?
I don't want to do
You
that.
don't want to do it.
And then there are days when I do want to do it. So for anybody who's feeling all of the things,
Yeah.
it's all normal. Sometimes I will go to the airport and if I'm having a really hard day, I absolutely will advocate for myself and say, I need assistance. Yes, please help me. And
Oh, I love this.
sometimes I will take a wheelchair and it drives me crazy.
But yes, but that's the thing. It's like surrender. And surrender is something I hated that word for so long. I felt like it was telling me to like quit something and give up part of myself. It felt like it was challenging who I am.
It is, and the thing is about that word surrender is we always anticipate it's gonna come at a time when we're ready, and it will make you buckle in the knees.
Yeah.
You're not ready,
Mhm.
and then you take a breath and you say, "Okay," and you sit in the wheelchair, and you are so incredibly grateful for the ride, and then you hopefully maybe tell a joke or something to the person that's pushing you, or you see something along the way to your gate that you wouldn't have seen if you were trying so desperately hard to get to the airport. So, coming back to my very first airport experience, because I was still pushing back. I definitely did not request a wheelchair. I definitely did not tell the airline that I was disabled, that I was legally blind because I had it.
Yeah.
And I got there and I was on my way to the gate. And I mean, my breath work. You talk about divine timing of having breath work as my main practice.
And, you said something earlier that made me think of this that, what we haven't practiced regularly, we cannot access, unfortunately, in a moment when we really need something. So, with all of my years of training, I could know a lot of stuff, but if I haven't been practicing it and something really hard and life altering changes for me, I'm not going to be able to access that to ride those waves unless I've been practicing it before the stressful thing happens. So you have training, maybe experience. What was it like actually starting to have to use those skills that, we can take for granted?
It's such a good point. It's such a good point. Well, I had to have bilateral cataract surgery 3 summers ago. And I knew I needed something. I was setting myself up for recovery and I wanted meditation, but I realized I didn't want anyone else's voice. I wanted to hear my voice. And so I started recording my own meditations for myself. And
Brilliant.
I put the breath work in there and I put the things in there that I was using. I mean, don't you remember? I remember having so many of my teachers during COVID, during the shutdown, they would always say this:
Yeah.
this is the time to bring your practice. You've been practicing for this time. This is why you've been doing this all these years. So if there is a practice that you know and that you love, but you don't quote unquote have the time to do it,
Oh, yeah.
open your heart and lean all the way into it because it's there to help you, heal you, hold you, offer
Hmm.
you home. Whenever the day comes or the moment comes, and it can be anything.
And those
We
moments do come. And I think we can all
all
look
the
back on
time. They
last
come
week
all
and
that's what
last
I'm saying.
month and find a moment where we were like, I don't know what to do. In
Yeah,
which case we will do something that is soothing in the moment, but not necessarily functional in the long term. We will
not
cope.
sustainable. It's not
We're going to
sustainable.
cope no matter what. But how nice does it feel when you're coping in a way that helps in the long term, not just the short term? It's so nice.
Yeah, no, I breath work has it has just it's opened my heart in ways that I didn't even think was possible. It's helped me
Well,
move through rage that I didn't know I had. And it's literally been life-giving for me. It really has. That is what got me through that airport, is breathing through the whole thing, because the amount of men going so quickly and ran over sugar. So sugar is now an extension of my arm.
Yeah.
The vibrations I pick up from her, she's telling me if we're on smooth surface, curb, if there's pebbles, if there's a small child, if there's a display, if there's a suitcase. They were going so fast that they ran over my cane and kept going. It made me so sad. It made me so sad because it's not just an airport. We're all moving so fast that we don't even recognize. And of course, it made me incredibly angry. And I have just enough vision to where I probably could have, walked faster and tripped them or something with my cane. Don't think I
I
have
like that this has gone through your mind since.
I have lots of ideas here. I have lots of backup plans. So I finally made my way to Santa Fe, and you talk about vulnerability. I was vulnerable 24/7 on that trip. And I remember getting to the door where we were going to have our training. I remember just before I opened it, just thinking, okay, more than likely you're going to be the only one with a white cane. More than likely people are going to stare. It's okay. It's okay. You got this. And I opened the door and there were 3 steps right in front of me. I was like, shit, I didn't think about this. So I had to make my way down the steps with sugar. And the lighting was off that day. And I just thought, I mean, don't make the entrance where I'm just falling into the
Yeah.
room. There any serious that could happen. Please let me get to my chair. Just let me get to my chair and then we're good. And I did. I did. So I remember the steps. There were 3 steps down and 18 steps from the last step to my chair. Because this is something that we do, is we count steps. Safety. So on a lunch break, some of the women and I went to go walk down the street, and it's Santa Fe. The streets are busy. Okay, I remember that because I was so angry because I have enough vision that I can still see you. I
Mhm.
can see, but I can't see. Sometimes it's complicated, but older gentleman just wouldn't stop staring. And I looked one of them straight in the eye and just winked at him, and they kept going. And he's like, oh my God. Hey, I, s- I swear that blind woman just winked. Is that possible? Well, no shit, it's possible. I still can wink. I mean, I still can blink my eyes.
Well, listen, is there significance to the white cane being white? Is
Yeah, and you'll notice there's always a red piece of tape at somewhere
Yeah.
on the cane, right?
Yeah.
So depending upon where the red tape is, it's to let the public know if you have no vision, if you have little vision, right? It
Wow.
differentiates the different levels of vision that you still have.
Wow. So the cane
But
is actually the spectrum.
yes, the cane is
Wow.
the spectrum, but at the same time,
Probably pretty inaccurately because day to day, your vision
it
and room to
changes all the
room
time.
and business to business, it
Yes.
changes.
And it's very rebellious to not use a cane that's white. And I have a number of custom colored cane. When I saw someone with a colored cane, I think that's when I got so excited about connecting to my style again, right? Because you think, oh, well, now I'm just out in public with this cane. And oh, now it's the conversation of disability. You get diagnosed and you have to really work your way through that. And
Yeah.
then you go back and then you have another conversation of the new title of being disabled.
Mhm.
And so it's this filter, these new filters
Yeah.
that now you think people are looking at you through, or maybe you're looking.
Yes. And I think that was the most brilliant way of saying it. It's not even the filter of how you're seeing yourself, it's the consideration of how others will see you. And it's like full circle to that story you were telling of kind of the assumptions that you didn't realize you had of your great aunt when you're like, her house is looking good, you know? She's
Mhm.
blind. She looks good.
Yes.
It's like this assumption that to be blind, to be disabled, can't be aligned with this, that these two things oppose. It's
Yeah.
so, and so you're breaking out of maybe it wasn't a mold you were ever in, but maybe it's a mold we imagine having with disability culturally.
Oh, I absolutely. And, a statistic that really opened my eyes, pun intended, that the disability community is
Yeah.
the largest minority community that every single one of us will be a part of.
Let's let that sink in.
The disability community is the largest minority community that we will all be a part of. At some point in our lives, we will maybe need crutches, maybe need a wheelchair, or might need assistance in some way due to our health.
Hmm. And yet we look at those with disabilities in these kind of culturally assumed belief systems like it's different.
Yep.
Yet it could be all of us.
It's going to be all of us.
Yes.
All of us. I told a friend of mine that, and she said, "Well, I just don't understand that." And I said, "I understand. I want you to sit with it for a little while, and that's fine. It's fine because you know it's just like when someone says, "I'm fine. I'm not overworked. I'm fine." When they are exhausted, they have an autoimmune disease. They've been working their tail off, working a job they don't like,
Yep.
living in a relationship they don't like, doing all these things that we think that we have to constantly still be doing. It goes back to those men who rolled over my suitcase and just the hurriedness. It's not just outside of ourselves and in our society, it's in our nervous system.
Yeah.
This hurriedness. And we're all tired, but no one wants to say they're tired because they think something's wrong with it. And then no one wants to
Right.
say they're sick or disabled because they think something's wrong with it.
And everyone says they're fine because they don't want to
Everyone's
acknowledge
fine.
the difficult feelings, the difficult thoughts. And what it all kind of goes back to is this idea, and there's probably a lot of words for it, but what comes to my mind is weakness, right?
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to be weak, and to be weak is to be vulnerable. And yet, none of these things are necessarily weaknesses. They could be vulnerabilities. Vulnerability is not necessarily bad.
It's real life. It's
Yeah.
real life. It's not an Instagram reel. This is
Yeah.
real life. So the disability part is, yeah, that's been an interesting one too, to kind of to play with. It's again, it's someone else's filter for yourself.
Yeah.
I think this has been a deep dive into my own ability to break through codependency.
Oh, interesting. I thought you were going to say like your own biases. I
Yeah, well, it
realize.
is, and it's the
Yeah.
same thing as my biases because I have to let go of what I think that person's thinking of me, right?
The
Like,
reliance.
what do I think of me
Yeah.
now that I have a cane? I use a cane, but then again, I do a lot of help at my family's cattle ranch. And I don't always need a cane out there when I'm working cattle or doing whatever we're doing. And so now I have to have that conversation with people. Well, I need it sometimes, but not all the time. And
Hmm.
then in my mind, I have moments of, well, now they think I'm faking it. Well, I'm not faking it.
Uh,
It's
First,
so,
I have to say, isn't it interesting that cattle are more predictable than humans in an airport?
yes. Yeah. There's a lot to that.
We could go on and on. You know, and just again, the way that you're opening this up with that word codependency, but it's so true. It's like, I am only as good as, or I will only allow myself to feel as good as how I believe others value me, how I believe others appraise me.
Yeah.
And we have so many cultural biases, and there's so much discrimination around disability. And it's like you're unwinding your own as you're in it, and everyone else stays comfortable over
Yeah.
here, hoping, pretending, or believing that it will never be them.
Yeah.
And
But when
that friend of yours is probably like, wait a second, you're telling me, you know, I don't want to think about it happening to me. And I could say, I think that there's a lot of reasons because, we don't want to have pain or limitation. But for a lot of us, we don't want to have that discrimination and we don't want to be seen differently, even though we are no longer in middle school or in high school looking to be the same, to stand out in the right ways. As adults, it's not that much different.
No, because all those inner girls are with us.
Yes, they are.
That 13-year-old self is saying, "Oh, I don't want to bring that cane. I don't want to bring that out and look weird and look
Hmm.
have people stare at me." I think the statistic is 7% of the blind population actually uses a white cane.
Whoa.
Yeah, because no one wants to walk out and be seen with a cane. But I say, don't you want to find the bathroom at the restaurant by yourself?
I think like that makes me just think of myself as a teenager and my kids. It's like,
Yeah,
hey, it's not even 40 degrees. Put a jacket on. And it's like, no. And then I get to school and see none of the kids are
right.
wearing jackets. So, oh, so my kid's not going to wear a jacket. It's so deeply ingrained in us.
It's wild. We had a social for the nonprofit one time, and there was a gentleman that came and he had a driver with him that helped him get to the table and introduce himself. And I noticed he had a white cane with him that was folded up under his arm. And about an hour into the event, I said, "Well, do you let me help you with your cane?" And he said, "Oh no, I don't use this thing. I just have it just to let people know." And I said, "Well, okay, wait a minute. I actually have questions. Hang on.
Good.
I'm like, tell tell me more. I want to know more about that. Why do you carry it?" "Well, so people know that I can't see that well." "Right. And what happens if you open it up and use it?" "Oh, no, I don't even know how to use it." I said, "Wait, how long have you had this?" "Oh, I've had it for like 10 years." I said, "Oh my, I can't remember his name now, and I'm sad about that because I loved him. I
Oh
thought he was
my
so
gosh.
great." He said, "No, I just get around, I just get around." It's that generation that they would rather not leave their home than be seen using a cane. When I have those days all the time, but then I say to myself, I'm either going to sit here in my fear or my freedom is on the other side of my fear.
We could be having a conversation about women and body image right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
would like to be on every panel possible for that. Just to roll up, literally rolling my cane.
It's just that it's so universal.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't even say just women. It is
People.
profound for women. The numbers are different for women, but it is people.
Mhm.
And staying home, not going to the thing, not trying the new thing.
Oh, yeah. And a part of my push to use the cane was, I have a 15-year-old son, and I don't want him to have to take care of me. Like, of course, absolutely. I say, how many steps into the restaurant? Help me get to the restroom sometimes,
Good.
if I need help. 100%. What I'm talking about is I don't want him to have to stop his entire life to take care of mine.
Mhm.
And because that gentleman, I don't want that. And I'm not judging him. 100%
No,
understand, but I don't want that for me.
his life
No,
is limited without it.
that is a huge population of people who are either staying at home or when they go out, they have a human guide, a child, a partner, someone that's helping them. My husband helps me all the time, and I am so incredibly grateful, but I want to do it myself. In rooms, in businesses, in places I can do it myself, I sure as fuck want to do it. I'm sorry. I hope I
Yeah.
can say that.
No, you can. Yeah,
I want that for me, and I want that for
I
everybody.
do too. Yeah.
Everybody.
It's really like sinking in. Like, it's really interesting what we don't think about when it doesn't affect us.
No, and frankly, I'm very honest about that. I did not, I mean, I became an accessibility strategist because my life became inaccessible overnight. And so I learned how to make my website, my social media accessible.
I think it'd be really interesting to hear you share anything that you can, but these are things that we don't think about. Like if I had a brick and mortar business,
Right.
I would receive, a list of specifications for ADA compliance, right? And I don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was hearing you talk about fonts, and then I did laugh because I got a message from my sister she's like, "Ashley, I'm almost 50. I can't read that." She's like, "I have
Yes.
to put on readers. Can you
Yes.
make that bigger for us?" And I was like, "Wow." And then I heard you say it and I'm like, "Okay, there's my sign." Twice in a week.
Because it's not just when you make something accessible, visually accessible, well, in general, but visually, it opens up to being accessible for not just the blind community, but also the neurodivergent community,
Yeah.
also dyslexia community. The larger the font, the easier it is for the brain to read it. It's easier to see, and the brain can just easily read, oh, perfect.
Yeah.
We don't need to have our clients searching for all of the pieces just because we have a long story we want to tell.
Making the details, the things that are important for people to be able to understand who, what, where, when, why, how.
Yes, it's
Large.
mindfulness 101. I'll say this, I'll give a couple of things that people can
Hmm.
do literally even while they're listening to this podcast. If you're in your stories on Instagram, whatever you're posting, make it large. Just make it larger. Anything lower than 16 points is
Hmm.
real hard.
Oh, but you know what? That's actually not asking a lot. I think that's
I know.
helpful.
I
So,
know.
so you're talking about over 16. 16 is
Yes.
quite small still on social media.
Yes. I mean, I'm up to 24. That's my favorite. But
Yeah.
the words in your stories just make them larger. Whatever you're telling them, if it's important, you can actually say it over 3 different slides. Just make the font larger. That's number 1.
Okay.
Add high color contrast if you can. Meaning, if your text is in white, put it in black background.
So
Simple.
when people use too many neutrals, light on light, it's lost.
So it's lovely and it's beautiful, but it blends in and no one sees it.
Right.
And it's kind of the point, and I understand the design. I used to love it. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
still in the wellness space as a teacher of yoga and meditation, but all of my marketing items are now all high color contrast.
It is
Because,
laughable, by the way. Anyone who is in that field of work will know what we're
oh,
talking about. We went through, I mean, maybe close to a decade of like light white, 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 white. Everything was so whitewashed. If
yes,
you look up
in
like yoga
more
studio
ways than one.
branding,
Yeah.
white.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. So for social media, that's make your fonts larger, make them larger, high color contrast. And if you do, this is for anyone who does have a brick and mortar, please add an accessibility page to your website. You can put it on the contact page. When I go to places now, prior to going, I
Yeah.
always go to their website or go to Google to check out what I'm walking into.
Okay.
When I get out of my Uber, I need to know, am I stepping out onto a curb? Is it grass? Do you have steps up to your building? Is it a ramp? Show me what you have so I can know if it's easy for me to get into your building or not.
Even if you don't, then someone knows what they need for an
Right.
accommodation.
Right. It's vital for us. It
Yeah.
really is. Because I won't go to businesses that don't have that. This comes back to the mindfulness. This is why mindfulness and accessibility just beautifully blend. I work with thoughtful leaders, mindful leaders, to lead us into a future that's accessible. So simple things, really simple. help your new clients and customers, and looping back to the large portion of the blind community that stays at home because it's not accessible and they're nervous to be out with a cane. That doesn't even scratch the surface of a life as a wheelchair user.
Oh,
Because everywhere
yes.
I go now, I see if there's steps or a ramp. And we absolutely need to do better as a society. It's not okay. We are keeping the confinement going by not making places accessible.
And the way that you're talking about this, the idea of confinement, the biases we have, the discrimination and the physical limitations, all of it.
Yeah.
Tell us about the work that you do. So your work
Mm.
is all through the lens of mindfulness, and some of your work is specific to this community and population and this work. And you have these other things that you're also doing that are outside of this. So I wonder, today, what is it you're enjoying doing?
Mm. Right now, I am electric offering breath work. I started studying breath work and practicing it 14 and a half years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I'm so, so, so lucky to have it to help me move through this time of my life. It reminds me that I'm electric and that I am not stuck in any way. And I couple it with restorative yoga and sound bath journeys.
This. Now,
So
are these
it's
mostly live or are they online?
most of
Yeah,
them are here in my home. I have a home studio, but I just opened everything up also to online to my virtual studio.
amazing.
So I'm working with people all over the world at the moment.
It is
And
so amazing.
it's great. It is, I'm so incredibly lucky to have the skills and the training that I do. We all need a place, we all need practices to remember that we are completely whole where we are. And on the days we feel completely scattered, you know.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
you said
leaning,
that there are days where you still want to pull the blanket over your head, and and that's okay. And we'll have those days.
it is that's an honest day. That is an honest day. So I teach classes and I also work privately with people, and I teach accessibility workshops. I help businesses make their spaces and places accessible for the blind community. I combined it with mindfulness because I know that I learn the best when I am in a relaxed state.
Mhm.
And sometimes talking about making your space accessible is stressful, and I get
Mhm.
that. But I am offering
Yeah.
what I didn't know prior to becoming blind. Now that I know it, I'm just, you guys, you'll have to know this because there are like 5 things you could do in the next 20 minutes to make your website and even your space accessible. You don't have to knock down walls right this moment, but just having a new conversation. Let your website just be accessible. Let your social media page be.
I've never thought about or heard of website accessibility, and I love that. I've
Yeah.
signed many leases, I've looked at many spaces, and it is a really interesting thing when you are looking at accessibility.
Yes, it's so important to know. And that honestly, that is a thread throughout this entire experience for me. It doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Yeah.
Just like my vision, I can see, but I can't see. It's the balance of it all.
Mhm.
What can I do that's simple today?
Yes. It's a great question to ask, like at any point in the day.
Mm.
What is possible that I can do right now in any realm of life? We often are looking at tomorrow or next month and we're thinking about what we can and can't do or what's possible or impossible. But that pulling back to like, what is the thing I can do right now? And it sounds like breath became that for you. For someone who, you have to live under a rock at this point to have not heard of all the different types of breath work practices. And I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of really intense breath work, and then people don't know where to begin. Do you have any recommendation for what it looks like to do it before you need it? What
Yeah.
what do you find you're recommending to people?
You know what I'm telling people is it's just like meditation. I love some of the meditation apps out there. When you're starting something new, let yourself pretend like you're dating the app or dating the
Oh, I
person
like this.
you're listening to, the teacher. If you don't like their voice, skip them. Go to the next one.
Yeah,
This does not
good.
mean you are not a good meditator. This just
Mhm.
means that that's not the right fit. So keep
Mhm.
going.
I
And
love it.
and you literally you can go and put in breath work
Yeah.
and just try a couple people out. Some of them are gonna be aggressive, and they're not the right one. Some of them are gonna be too soft, and that might not be the right one.
Mhm.
What I love about leading breath work is that it reminds the person they are the best healer for themselves. They actually know what kind of breath they need that day. Because you'll know if you do an aggressive style and then
Mhm.
you realize you're kind of jacked up and you're too
Yeah.
high or too hyper, that's not what your heart was asking. And
Mhm.
then, so what is your heart asking?
Yep.
Check in and really become your own guru, your own healer. We're the ones we've been looking for.
And I'll say that it doesn't take long to get from trying a few to that place where you're like, I know this isn't what I want. This
Yes.
isn't what I like. All it takes is trying a few. You'll find what
Yep.
you enjoy, much like anything, really. I mean, I'm sure everyone's tried a few yoga classes or gotten into some form of exercise or tried new foods. Like, you know what you
Yeah.
like. And it doesn't take long to go from there to what MK was saying. And I knew I needed it to be my voice. I needed to be saying these things to myself, right? And there's so many great resources out there. I actually just started recording for Insight Timer, and I actually recommend that you do that
It's been
as
on my
well.
list for years. Let's talk.
Well,
I need to
there's
talk.
your sign. And so I'm really excited to be offering it. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to create things for people who are like, I can't meditate. I don't want to. I don't want to sit here and accessible yoga and breath and
Yes.
based on different moods. So if you're like, I am jacked up, I don't know what the breath I need is to come down. So I'm trying to create things that speak the language of people coming in who are like, I don't know anything about this. So I don't know the name of a breath, right? I'll help you get
Oh,
yourself.
I need that assistance.
That
I will leave everyone with a couple of things is
great.
number one, if you don't own a weighted blanket by now is your opportunity to purchase one. If you don't want to buy one, go and grab two towels out of the bathroom cupboard, lay down, place one over your belly, and then one on top of the body if you want, wherever, and then another blanket, get as many blankets as you want. Place one hand on the belly and one hand on the chest. Relax your elbows, and then just start to breathe. We're already doing it, it's already happening. All you have to do is keep coming back to it. Just you can literally say to the words to yourself, I am breathing in and I am breathing out. And that sounds so simple.
It does, but after
It's
even
so
having gone
hard.
through, I think it was I was going into my second yoga teacher training, and my teacher realized how much I hold my breath, and I didn't know I was holding my breath, and I had already gone through a yoga teacher
I
training
know.
and breath work, and I still tell myself to breathe a few times throughout the day intentionally because if I am stressed or if I'm thinking, there's so many reasons we'll hold our breath and notice if it's happening for you. And it is not silly to actually breathe normally. Just thinking about breathing, you actually will breathe a little bit deeper. And where MK was saying, say those words, well, now you've filled your mind with something. So you're less likely to think about your to do list.
Yep.
That's a great place to start. And I love just using what you have around your house. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Why not?
Hmm. Load up on those blankets, and suddenly it's a weighted blanket.
Already have what you need. You already have what you need. It's right there. The weight on the belly is so that it brings the mind down.
Oh,
It gives the
interesting.
brain something to physically feel and focus on lower in the body. You want your breath to be lower in the body. You want to
Oh,
be
that's
in the
great.
belly and in the chest. And so you have to physically give the body something, a touchstone.
Yeah. Because we're in thinking so
Right.
much of our day, we don't notice and feel our body. And having that weight helps people go, oh, yeah, my body. Just, oh, yeah. And
That's
hopefully for most people, that becomes a neutral practice because there are a lot of people that thinking about being in their body is something that scares them. And so they don't try to do it. But maybe just this breathing.
and that's the other point to having the weighted blanket over the stomach
Mhm.
is, again, when you give the body something physical, and it now becomes a boundary between you and your outside world.
Yeah.
It gives you a space. It's just like wearing an eye pillow. It gives you that permission to go inside. We need it we physically need to experience what that literally
Well,
feels like.
right. Because we tend to think about our bodies from that external perspective.
Right.
I love that. Oh, this has been so lovely. And I'm so grateful for you
Great.
coming. And I will share how to find you. You all can find that in the show notes. I definitely recommend looking at her intuitive meditations that she has in her link tree. I was very intrigued myself, and more. Hopefully, you'll see her soon on Insight Timer. Good. Okay, we'll go back to weeding. I'm going to go plant some flowers.
Yes, yes, yes. Awesome day. So fun.
It
Thank you
was so good to
so,
see
so much. I
you.
appreciate this.
And MK, we appreciate you being here so much. This has been another episode of In Our Skin, and I'm so grateful for you being here as always. Head to the show notes to find links to learn more about MK and her work, as well as links to free resources, retreat signups, and more. As always, I would love to hear from you. Tell me what you want to hear on the pod. Tell me what you're taking away, or we can keep the conversation going over on Instagram. Until next time, take good care.